welcome. If you own a BBC Micro and you've built the light pen circuit, then stand by. Today's the day we're transmitting the light software in just a few moments. Stick your dark sucker over the annoying flashing blob. Now, this week's titles.
If you own a Spectrum and loaded last week's software, you might have recognised the graphics sequence from David Thorpe, who also wrote those opening titles. David, welcome. Now, I understand that your background is completely different. It's not from a computer programming background.
That's right. I've been in architecture all my life, and I bought a computer in 1983 in the summer, and I did a golf game called Royal Birkdale, which I took to Ocean Software. They liked the game, but they asked me to do an opening title picture for the game. And I did it, and they quite liked it, so they've asked me to do all their games since.
So that was your first one. Which is your sort of favourite graphic sequence or opening title?
Probably Daley Thompson's Decathlon, because it was the best-selling game last year, and I enjoyed doing it very much, particularly doing a portrait of Daley himself and getting it quite accurate on the screen.
Now, graphics take up an awful lot of memory in a system. How do you manage to get all the animation that you use into a little thing like the Spectrum?
I don't do that personally. Paul Owens from Ocean Software has done all the machine code graphics for me. I did all the drawing, but he put all the programming in.
But you can program yourself if necessary?
Yes, in BASIC, but it's rather jerky in BASIC.
Okay. Now, the other thing is, because of your different background, because you come from a creative and graphics background, do you go about doing the graphics sequence on a computer in a different way?
Yes, I do. I start by drawing it out on a piece of tracing paper which has the map of the screen grid on it, and I work it out quite carefully on that, and then I put it in using a Melbourne draw system, which is in fact a tool for putting it into the computer itself.
So you decide up front what you want to get out of the graphic sequence, and then just use the computer as a tool?
That's right. I organise it first and then put it in.
That's very good. Thank you very much for doing that for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony?
Yes, Jane, and if you press the space bar on your BBC Micro, we're now going to start the first ever transmission of the Photon software. When we've finished, and once you've saved it, please remember to save it, reset the machine, and we'll give you a second chance to get it down later on in the programme. But bear with us, the whole thing is slightly experimental. Talking of software, you may have seen displays like this in your neighbourhood high street store. On this side, we've assembled 15 popular cassettes of games for Commodore machines, all written by two guys. The maddening thing is that their combined ages is less than mine at the moment, and they're good at this. One of their games creator, won the Software of the Year at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. They've won this thing, the Golden Joystick Award, as Programmers of the Year from Commodore, although frankly I prefer the title rather than the prize. Their names are Richard and David Darling. They're right here. Who's who? You're Richard. That's right. Right. Let's get the horrible subject of age out of the way to begin with, so I get thoroughly depressed. You are?
17.
And you are?
18.
How did it all start?
When we lived in Canada 4 years ago, our friend had an Atari games machine, and we used to play games on that, but we soon got fed up. So he got a VIC-20 and started programming, and we also got a VIC-20 and started programming games just as a hobby.
Because at that time there were not many games with the VIC-20?
No, that's right. There was hardly any you could actually buy, so if you wanted to play the games on the computer, you had to make them yourself.
I see. When did you start getting to the point then where you had produced, if you like, a database of games which you were prepared to sell? When did all that happen?
We came back to England, which was, how long ago was that?
Beginning of 83.
Yeah, beginning of 1983. And we put a few classified ads in a few of the magazines. And then it all started from there. And we just put bigger and bigger ads in and sold more and more games.
Now, that was your company, Galactic Software?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wasn't that a fairly odd commercial decision to make? Weren't there lots of people trying to sell games at that time?
Well, during that year, there were lots of people started, but I think the boom sort of started in the summer, so we were a bit before the main part of the boom.
Right, but what was it, do you think, about your games that made them commercially popular? Well, how come you made money out of them? What was good about them?
Well, we started off on the VIC-20, and there wasn't many games around for the VIC-20 at the time.
One good, unique selling proposition, right.
Yeah.
Well, what else? Were they good games, do you think?
Well, I consider them that they were good games.
All right.
And also, we were selling them very cheaply at the time. we were selling them 14 games for $9.95, which was a lot cheaper than anybody else was at the time.
So you weren't just immersed in computing then, you also had a good commercial sense. You'd identified a market where there weren't many games, and you got the pricing right.
Yeah.
Now, how did you get involved with Mastertronic, which is where you are at the moment?
That was at the beginning of 1984, and they were looking for somebody who could make quite a large number of games for them in a relatively short amount of time. And because we had the Games Creator system that we were using ourselves on the 64, we could do that quite quickly.
Now, this was, let's talk about Games Creator for a moment, because I said it won a prize at Las Vegas. This was a system that you devised really for your own benefit to begin with, but is now available commercially, and one imagines doing reasonably well. Will you tell me something about it?
Yes, we developed it for ourselves so that we could write games, a lot of games for Mastertronic in a short period of time. And then when we finished it, we realised that it would have, a large commercial value. So then we adapted it so that anybody could use it. And now in England it's being marketed to a company called Mirrorsoft. And it's being marketed in the States by Mastertronic.
Do you think this is the way that games as such are now going to go, where people start to devise their own games? What I'm really asking is the day of the cassette game over?
I don't think it's over. I think that it's levelled out. It's not going to be an increasing market anymore. I think there'll always be, everybody will always want computer games. But I think, like board games have levelled out. They're not selling more and more Monopoly sets anymore. It's the same with computer games, that it's not going to increase anymore.
Sort of saturation point, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, people will still want new games, but it won't be an increasing amount of new games that they'll want.
Now, it is interesting that people say that the effective life creatively in computing is very short, and you usually have to be very young. It's also perhaps significant that in Peter Pan and Wendy, Peter Pan, the boy who never grows up, lives with or goes out for his adventures with the Darling family. Are you getting to the point where you're going to run out of creative ideas and be burnt out in 2 years' time at the age of 21 or whatever? What do you think?
Well, I hope not. I think possibly it seems like it's a young person's thing to do to program, but I think that might just be because of the situation that young people are in. They have a lot of spare time, and they have the time to program on computers, so they develop that ability. But I see no reason why, when you get older, if you still spend the time programming, I see no reason why you shouldn't be just as good as the younger people of that time.
I have an awful feeling that they're right. Finally, and very briefly, if someone's got a good idea for a game and doesn't know what to do with it, how can you help? Can you help?
Yeah, well, if they could send it in to Thames TV, or a letter, if they send us a letter. We've had a lot of experience with computer companies around the country, and we could give them advice on who to send it to or what they should do with it if they want to market themselves or whatever.
Thank you both very much indeed. That is an offer we can scarcely refuse. If you have such an idea, do send it to us at this address. For Computer Buffs, Thames Television, 149 Tottenham Court Road, London W1P 9LL. Now we're going to stay with software, and we find a dear old Ben Knox up to his neck in mud. Serves him right.
Hi. Well, I guess that most people have played an adventure game on their micros at some time or another. If you have, then you'll have probably suffered the frustration of meeting so-called characters, which are obviously randomly generated. And when you come to the end of the game, that's it. There's nothing else except perhaps an advert for the next game from the company which wrote yours. In the studio this week, we have Richard Bartle, who is a lecturer at Essex University. Welcome, Richard.
Hi, Ben.
Now, Richard has developed a game called Mud, which looks set to eliminate your adventure blues. What exactly is Mud?
Well, MUD stands for Multi-User Dungeon, and it's like an ordinary adventure game, except that instead of playing against computer-generated people, you play against real people.
OK, perhaps you could show us how to play the game, then.
Well, OK, I've already started playing, and I'm now stood at the start. We're being harassed by a rabbit at the moment. So if I just wander around... Ah, there we are. There's John K. the Wizard. Say hello to him.
I see, so you can actually have a conversation with someone else who's on the game.
Oh, yes.
He's a real person.
But it's just like an ordinary adventure game. Look,
Oh, I see, so you can actually use the compass directions, as with a game like The Hobbit, to move around the system, and it gives full descriptions.
Oh, yes, well, you can say brief, I mean...
So what, so you can cut it down just to a short one-liner?
Oh, it's devious here. Ask devious where they are.
Devious is another player, then?
Yes, we can see how many of the players there are. Say who. There's Toffee and Devious. I mean, John K's probably cleared off somewhere. The wizard can fly around.
And we're Toffee, and Devious is someone else. I see.
Let's see. So if you just move around, there's a fire there. Oh. In the study. Ah. That's nearby here, so if I go east... So if we end up in a study, lots of treasure there.
Now all these things are treasure, I see.
Ah, yes, devious
is there.
Yes. Hug devious, be nice.
So you can actually sort of pass off human emotions and so on.
Oh yes, I'll get some of that treasure while we're at it. Get all. So it should pick up a lot of treasure, yes. Genius tells you ha ha ha.
Thanks very much, Richard. We have to stop you there. Obviously, this is a game which can keep you occupied for hours. If you have a Commodore 64, you can play it on CompuNet, where it costs £3 an hour. It's also available on Essex University's computer, which you can get onto via PSS. If you're taking part in our light pen experiment, press your spacebar now for your second chance to download the software. Now, if you're still stuck in a single-user adventure, here's Tony to throw your lifeline.
Yes, it's all very well if you're good at adventure games, but in my case, I'm a total disaster. It's not that I can't ever finish them. I never get near that stage. I never get past first base. Well, help may be at hand. If you read Computer and Video Games magazine, you will perhaps have noticed that here in the middle is an adventure games helpline. I will give you an example of how it works, because the chap who runs it is with me, Keith Campbell. Keith, I have a letter here, which was sent to you, and I would wonder if you would agree with me that this is typical of the sort of problem you get. It's from James Oram of Clwyd, who says, "Please could you tell me how to escape from the underground room with scratch marks on the wall without dying?" And that's in the game Hulk. So how do you help him?
Well, that's typical of the many letters I get about Hulk, and to help him, I use my database, Clues database. So, shall we select the Hulk game and see what we can find out? So put...
There we go.
Put Hulk in.
This is stored on a Tandy, is it? Yeah.
That's right. Is that the game? Yes, that's the one we want. It's now reading the clues in and sorting them into alphabetical order.
Now, this assumes, of course, that you've got all the clues. Where do you get the clues from?
Some from myself, my own experience of playing the games, and many from the readers who write in with tips when I've printed a plea in the helpline.
Oh, so you need help sometimes.
Oh, yes.
OK, well, let's go back to the question. Tell him how to escape from the underground room with the scratch marks on the wall without dying first.
Right. Underground room, clue number 274.
Fair enough.
Let's get that one up.
This is not going to be easy. I've got a very bad feeling about this.
This says examine the walls. Now, if he examines the walls, he'll find scratch marks, but he won't be able to scratch the wall because he won't be strong enough. So there's a little rider on there saying, remember what Dr. Strange told you.
But supposing he's never met Dr. Strange within the course of this game, which is in fact perfectly possible at this stage.
The chances are he won't have done, in fact.
Right.
So we go back to the clue list, and there's 2 or 3 entries here on Dr. Strange, and the interesting one looks like, where is he? 1133. He's in the empty dome. He appears when you become Hulk.
Right, and that in turn, I know, from my knowledge of this game, creates all kinds of other problems, doesn't it? Because you can only become Hulk for a short period of time.
Yes, they're all interconnected problems, yes.
So, when you write back to your respondent, James Oram, here, and I know you do it because on these rather neat little postcards, you've only got a postcard-sized space to write back to him on. How much information do you give him? Do you tell him how to solve the game from that point, or just give him the 1 point?
Just give him the 1 point, and as little information as possible, really, because I'm trying to make him think, just pointing him in the right direction, so that he gets the maximum enjoyment out of the game, which is, after all, a puzzle.
I think you get a sadistic kick out of making it even more difficult, actually. All right, well, look, so you would have given him about this much information. We'll assume that he's got himself back to the empty dome. What would you now put into the spectrum to help him out?
Well, I want to become Hulk, so I'd bite lip. So let's type bite lip.
Yeah.
Ouch, I scream. I'm the incredible Hulk now. Astral projection of Doctor Strange.
Ah, but now it's gone.
And now it's gone. And gas has come into the room, and he's now Bruce Banner again.
In other words, what you've done is you've translated James Oram's original problem into another problem somewhere else in the game.
That's right.
So now he's got to write to you again to get further advice. Listen, this is a marvellous idea, but it's an absolute dead ringer for going online, isn't it? Because at the moment it's only available by post.
Yes.
Are you going to do something about that?
Yes, we're going to operate a phone-in service within the next 3 or 4 weeks into Computer and Video Games Office, and also for those who are subscribers to Micronet, we'll be online at Micronet with pages of tips, adventure news, and sending messages to people who are stuck.
All right. Well, Keith, thank you very much indeed. I think it's a wizard idea, but look, don't get on to him if you want the answer, because I've been talking to him and he simply won't give it to you. Now for a different sort of adventure. an adventure into business software. Here's Jane.
Up until recently, Cyan were only really renowned for their game software, and then last year they launched their own pocket computer, the Cyan Organizer. And then in December they announced Exchange, a set of integrated software, mainly for the business market. Now Exchange runs on a variety of machines, but we're going to take a look at it running on the one per desk. Now one advantage of using it on this particular system is that the software is loaded onto a chip, so I don't even have to bother with loading the software from diskette. Now the first screen that Exchange presents you with is divided into 3 areas. The top area is the control area and shows me all the commands and functions that are available. The middle area is the display area, and at the bottom here we have a status line. Exchange, being an integrated set of software, has 4 different applications that we can use. We have Abacus, the spreadsheet, Quill, the word processor, Archive, which is a very powerful database, and Easel, a graphics program. Exchange, rather than running on Windows or a graphics environment, has opted for tasks, and I can have up to 8 tasks active at any one moment in time. So far here we've got 3 tasks. We've got letter, figures and graph. Let's first of all take a look at Quill, the word processor. Quill is what the journalists call a WYSIWYG word processor, and for those of you compiling a dictionary of computer acronyms, that means what you see is what you get. And a good example of this can be seen if I go in and alter, for example, the right margin. So I ask to alter margins, say that we're going to alter the right one, and now you should see that that right margin all gets squashed in. On a lot of word processors you wouldn't be able to see that until you printed it out. Well, a brief look at the word processor, but let's press on. I come back to the main Exchange menu, and I can leave any particular task exactly where I want to and return to it at any later stage. Now Exchange, as the name implies, means that we can exchange information from one application to another. So let's have a go at that. I ask it to exchange information, and the first thing it asks me is, where do I want to get that information from? And we're going to take it from the spreadsheet. We've got some figures there of sales and cost figures. It then asks, where do I want to put that information? And I want to put it into a graph and plot the area as a graph. It first of all loads the spreadsheet for me so that I can tell it exactly how much information I want to take through. And we're going to take all the months of the year and the sales, the cost and the profits lines. And the rest of it just happens automatically. The figures are taken out of the spreadsheet, transported through to the graph paper and automatically plotted, showing me the sales, the cost and the profit lines. It even goes as far as to label all the different bars. Watching me give that demonstration of Exchange software was David Potter, the Managing Director of Cyan. David, welcome to the programme.
Good afternoon.
Now, Exchange software compared to some of the game software is totally different. Why the branch from one area into the other?
About 2.5 years ago we decided that it was commercially prudent to broaden and widen our markets. And so Exchange has been under development for the last 2 years. I think that was prudent.
Right. Now, the change, does that mean you think the games market is on the decline slightly?
No, I don't think so at all. But I think we are going to see a rapidly changing and evolving market in the home computer area. And I suspect that the computers we'll see in 5 years' time in the home are going to be very, very different from what we're seeing right now. So there's going to be great change and great flux and great evolution as well.
Now, Exchange, I mean, taking you into the business market, it's a fairly tough world in the business market. You think you can obviously survive there?
I think it's a tough world in the home computer market too. It's a tough world everywhere. Yes, undoubtedly. I think that technically, in terms of the skills we have and the abilities we have, they're superb. The relationships that we have around the world with the major computer manufacturers are excellent. And I have no doubt whatsoever that within Europe we can penetrate and have a major impact in the business market.
Now, the Exchange software I was showing, I managed to show Quill and Abacus
Yes.
and a few other things. There are some of sort of fairly advanced features I wasn't able to show you. Could you take us through some of those, just to tell us about them?
Well, Exchange is a huge piece of software. It's, in terms of scale, it's about the size of design of a jumbo jet with a couple of 100,000 moving parts. So there are many, many parts to it. But as one example, the database, for example, is actually a programming language and designed for people to implement specialist applications such as hotel keeping, for example, or stock recording and so on. So in fact, we're talking about a huge range of productivity and general purpose software.
And what about, I think there's also something called the task sequence language.
The task sequencing language, yes. That's to allow the user to customize something which he repeatedly does. It can also be used for training and support purposes and so on. But it's really to customize something that you do frequently, and then you don't have to go through and do it again and again.
So the example I was using of taking some figures from a spreadsheet into a graph package, I could task sequence that, so I didn't even have to type in exchange and what I wanted to exchange.
That is correct. You could one key that effectively so that it was automatic, if that's what you were doing frequently.
Say like at the end of every month or something?
Yes, indeed, yes.
Now, the Scion Organiser, I must admit, when that first came out, I saw it as a rather glorified sort of calculator, if you like. I've changed ideas about it now. Can you tell us some of the areas you think that's going into as well?
We see the Organiser as a very, very exciting product, and I think we're going to be able to make announcements fairly soon, just showing the huge diversity of OEM, or original equipment, applications that it has. The range is massive. We've been inundated by several hundreds of specialized and major market applications. A few examples: credit card control, data logging for recording of expenses, for example, or for field service engineers.
That could be for salespeople, say, out on the road, taking orders and sending it back.
Exactly. Merchandising and stock control. So the Organiser is, in fact, a general-purpose computer in a small little box. It has barcode readers, magnetic card readers, communications, modems, and so on, coming along. Some of those things are out, some of them are coming along. And so the range of applications is, in fact, huge.
Well, David, thank you very much for coming along and talking to us.
Thank you very much indeed, Jane. Thank you.
Interesting. Now, news. Guy, before you start, any news on these persistent rumours of the future, or lack of it, of the Acorn Electron?
Yes, rumours. There have been lots of them. Well, they seem to be false rumours. Acorn's Electron is not, after all, going to be killed off, despite anything you may have heard, or so says Acorn's temporary chairman, that's Alex Reed. And indeed, there's no reason to doubt him, because one thing that Acorn is not short of is electrons. The warehouse is jammed with them, and at their new low price, they're selling quite well. What Alex Reed was careful not to promise was that he would actually build any electrons this year. I gather that even with sales at present levels, stocks may last till Christmas. Let's hope news that it's not being killed off cheers up city financiers. But somehow I doubt it. The city is in a simple state of panic about micros. They've decided that the boom is over. They've decided that micros like skateboards